pleasure to introduce Tamseel Hussain. He's Chief Executive of Plug TV and Let Me Breathe India, and someone I consider a good friend. It's great to see you again, Tamseel. Tamseel's previously worked with organisations like Change.org, Oxfam India. He's also worked with CNN. And you'll find his stories on CNN International, The Guardian, Channel News Asia, and National Geographic. And he's here to talk about Girls on a Mission. It's a video that got over 8 million views and won Plug TV their second consecutive silver medal for best use of online video in the South Asian Digital Media Awards. So we'll put a link to the video in the chat on Events Air, but meanwhile, Tamseel, it is over to you.
It's so nice to connect again, Corinne. I'm just gonna talk a bit about what Plug TV is, and just a second. Yes, you can see my screen, right?
Yep, we can see it. Yep, perfect.
Great.
It's gone to screen to slideshow. Brilliant.
Great. So Plug TV is basically a creator economy system, which is, if you look at the creator economy, it's about 50 million people across the world, out of which only 1% of the people are able to influence. And these people usually you see them influencing in the form of Instagram Reels, YouTube, all those things, right? Which are in various genres. So about 4.5 years ago, we started People Like Us Create, which was a platform where we can enable the 99% to be able to tell their own stories in a factual way, in a fact-check way, give them the support that they need to thrive by telling stories. Through that, we've been able, and we actually started on a landfill where we were training our first batch, which were bass pickers who could actually tell stories on bass and like take people through experiential stories. And through that, we've actually powered 3 platforms now. Plug TV, which is an episodic platform, which is what our creators who are from Girls on a Mission, who belong to a small area, were able to create this documentary along with the production team, and were able to put it out to 8 million people. We also have partnerships with various platforms to make sure that these creators get the voice that they want. The second platform is Let Me Breathe, which is all about climate change and sustainability stories, which are visual and written in nature. And Social Saheli, which is not a journalism platform, but it is about rural women entrepreneurs who can actually use stories to be able to promote the businesses that they're actually doing. So these are 3 platforms that we run. This is also this is actually our 3rd award in digital media. And the first one was a COVID special project, we won the bronze. And in the last 2 years, we've been winning silver for online video, who are actually created by creators who are very unheard of. And for the first time, they're actually using their phone or cameras to be able to create these stories and make storyboards. And at the same time, fact check it and see how many more and more people can see it and actually build a community around it. We actually did a very intensive training for all the girls who were engaged in this documentary, which means we did a hybrid model during COVID. And it was peak COVID. I think it was the first wave and the second wave, and this project went through it, where it was very difficult for them to get access to mobile phones. And at the same time, when it comes to getting access to mobile phones, access trainings and understand issues and really understand the stories that they will be talking about. And this documentary we shot where our team and the girls together came in the village, and they took us throughout the village. It was shot in a record time of about 48 to 72 minutes, where the story was already there. The girls were already trained. They knew how to shoot. They knew how to make the storyboard. And we were basically supporting them and making sure they can tie it together. Right? So you see some clips where they're using snap spectacles. You see some clips where they're using various things. They also use AR filters in various aspects of things to make their stories and understand issues more immersively. And it was just such a fun time hanging out with all the girls who were there to really, really understand the issues that they are connected to. In a nutshell, what we do is that we have a creator base and we have very strong training modules. We support it with robust storytelling and production, and we really do regional and national. And now I think we are also present in beyond India. We are present in Nigeria and Indonesia as well, where we support organic distribution as well. And we are able to make sure that this ecosystem can thrive, and more creators are able to create amazing stories. And at the same time, gain the influence that they want to based on amazing stories and learn more about the issues that they can connect with. This is just a quick trailer.
ये कहानी है पुनीता, रिंकू, निशा और पिंकी की। जिन्होंने कुशीनगर में अपने गांव शाहपुर खलवापट्टी और मिश्रौली में एक एजुकेशन एनरोलमेंट की मुहिम चलाई, जिससे उन्होंने गांव के बच्चों का स्कूल में एडमिशन कराया। इतना सुंदर, उसके पास नॉलेज ना हो, पढ़ाई ना हो तो पूरा बेकार नहीं है। लड़का लड़की में कोई फर्क नहीं है। लड़कियां, जो लड़के नहीं कर रहे हैं इस समय, वो लड़कियां कर दे रही हैं, लेकिन काम में लोग जल्दी समझते नहीं हैं, थोड़ा टाइम लगता है। उसकी बुद्ध सी होती है बेटिया, थोड़ा भी दर्द होता है तो रोती है बेटिया। अगर रोशन करेगा बेटा तो बस एक ही फूल को दो दो फूलों की राजदूत होती है बेटिया। अगर हीरा है बेटा तो सच्ची मोती है बेटिया।
So this was a little trailer we had made where you actually see all these amazing girls, right? And they were a total batch of 45, out of which about these 10 girls, they were good in poetry, they were good in storyboarding, and we actually connected them to be able to tell these stories properly. And this was just a little trailer that you saw that was coming in. Sorry, I think my screen has stopped sharing. I'll be very quick with this. Okay, 1 second. This is the only thing I don't like about Google. Yes.
You okay?
Yes.
Zoom is sent to try us all. That's okay. Just take your time. Take your time. You got it. There you go. Brilliant.
Yes. Thank God.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. And like this, we've also like engaged on, like, if you look at the views that we get, like what most of the views that have actually come on this documentary are from regional areas and connected with audiences that these girls actually connect with, right? So we use a lot of regional social media apps in India to be able to make sure that they can gain this community. It also saw a lot of organic shares. Most of them were on WhatsApp. It went really viral on a lot of villages that they were connecting to. What the impact that had on the girls was that, and also local PR, which it instigated local PR as well. And the best impact that these girls actually had was that you saw more and more leaders and storytellers who started coming into the group, and they wanted to tell their own stories. They wanted to know what equipments are, and they wanted to learn so many more things through this, which was just amazing. What we really believe is that if everybody can get the power to create, you're able to change the way stories actually happen. So we have a community of, like, we've trained more than 120,000 people now. We have a community of 32,000 creators, which has got scientists, doctors, renewable energy experts, EV owners, gamers, finance experts, crypto experts, to like the girls that you met through the documentary. And we really encourage collaboration through the technology that we're building, and at the same time through the culture that we have of storytelling with these creators. We also partner with publications and brands, at mainly publications, to be able to make sure that they can get access to these creators and do stories in a very authentic and raw and real way. In a nutshell, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share, Kareem, about this. These are some of the numbers that we have in general. We have about a total of 120 shows, and it keeps growing every month. And just to give an example, if last year we did about 60 shows, in 2 months we were able to do 60 shows instead of 12 months. So the speed at which we're growing is amazing, and the speed at where we're changing the way people think about creating stories in areas which are very rural is very amazing as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tamseel. That is absolutely fascinating. Do you want to stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Oh, hang on. Wait, no, that looked important.
Oh, that's just a QR code. I can just put it up again.
Yeah,
Okay.
just for a moment, so folks have a moment to just screenshot that. It's nice for them to be able to give you a follow.
Very good. Yes.
There we go. So folks, take a shot of that. That's how you get in touch with the team at Pluck TV. Excellent. So, and now just unshare, and then we can, I've got some lovely questions for you. I always enjoy learning more about the way that you guys work. So first of all, though, let's talk about the topic of this video. Yesterday, of course, was International Women's Day. What are the opportunities, do you think, for publishers in India to expand their coverage of women's lives and concerns?
I think the opportunities are massive, especially in the last 2.5 years of COVID, and how we've seen opportunities in the virtual world rise is really good. So if you notice, the last 2 stories that have actually won the award, they both were led by girls, not like these are below 18, and these are for the first time telling their amazing stories. And this is unique. And the way it's growing, it's really huge because more and more people are getting access to mobile phones, more and more people are watching videos, and more people are getting skilled in their own way to be able to tell stories. So the access to this community is really huge. And at the same time, the knowledge of issues which we've seen, I mean, in the last 2.5, 3 years, when we've been traveling to these small areas and these villages and really working and training with them, the knowledge on the issues have increased quite a bit. So there were 3 batches, right? The first one was on girl education, where you see a lot of equality and equity conversations come in at a ground level, right? And then you also had a group on sexual health who are actually anonymously using audio storytelling to be able to create unique content which actually breaks that stigma in their own village. And the third one was obviously on climate change, where it's something that is very easy for people to connect, right? The more visual the communities are becoming, we see a rise in more and more women who can actually tell these amazing stories.
Wonderful, thank you. We do have a question from the folks who are watching, and dear friends, if you would like to ask a question for Tamseel, just put it in the live Q&A section on Events Air, and then we will respond to it here. The more questions, the better. And we have about 20 minutes actually, so we've got plenty of time. So this question is, how long does it take to make these videos with the community, and what should be the ratio of our own videos and the videos by community members? So there's kind of 2 questions there. So let's talk about how long it takes to make a video like that first.
So to answer that, there are 2 parts to it, right? One is the training and enabling part of it. And that's what takes the most amount of time, right? And we have training sessions, which takes about 24 to 48 hours. And if they're like amazing leaders who can pick it up, it's amazing. Then we do offer 45-day support after the community is trained, and we work with them to turn them into superstars, right? Who can tell these amazing stories. And when it comes to the ratio that you have, in my opinion, more authentic, the better. And it's a learning curve for these communities, right? We encourage them to at least make 3 stories in their own format, in their own way, on their own issues, where they basically learn a lot on how to storyboard and how to fact check. And at the same time, once they do this, it becomes easier for you to see, like you start realizing that your own time being invested as someone who knows this really well starts reducing quite a bit, where you're actually advising. It's just a process. It takes a long time to train, depends on how the community has access to mobile phones, and at the same time, how equipped the community is to do it, because you have storytellers everywhere. It's really the skills that people pick up.
Yeah, because storytelling is a human skill, I think. I mean, it's not new. Yeah, but bringing that into the digital era, I think, is something that is a challenge. Traditional newsrooms often think about social promotion at the end of the story production. It's not always something that people think about right from the beginning. So your process is quite different, and I'd love it if you'd be able to share with folks on the call how you start to think about promoting a piece of content from the time that you conceive of it as a project.
So the first thing that we actually do is we map 2 kinds of communities online, right? One are people who have no clue about the issue, right? And the second are people who connect with the storytellers themselves, which means people who are like the storytellers. So I'll give an example. We have a lot of ASHA workers and frontline workers who belong to various self-help groups who tell stories. So when they tell their stories, we promote it in a way which targets a lot more frontline workers and ASHA workers and self-help groups in their own area, so that it encourages a quality conversation. And the second is, the way we look at it is, it makes more sense to have a multi-channel partnership, right? Our platform directly last year capped at about 500K users, which was a huge deal for us because it's an organic growth. But when it comes to a multi-channel partnerships, we have communities which are above millions, right? So we have about 3 Snapchat shows. We have really amazing partnerships with local apps like ShareChat, Moj, and all these areas, where the video format really does the thing for them, where the organic growth happens really fast. So in that lens, we look at a multi-channel partnership and target 2 kinds of people. One, communities which are connected, and the second, people who have no idea. And which is why you see the way we make our stories, we have about 10 languages, right? So you see English subtitles, you see like regional subtitles coming in at various areas. So it's really about how well you repurpose it in various languages so it becomes consumable for people to do it.
So let's dig into that just a little bit more. You're talking about multi-channel partnerships. So let's say at the beginning of a project like Girls on a Mission, you've got the story idea, you've got a concept for this video output. How do you then begin to survey the landscape of who you might enter into a content partnership with or a channel partnership with, and how do you make those decisions? I guess what I'm looking for is the sorts of insights that editors and managers who are on this call might rethink perhaps some of how they're doing video at the moment.
Got it. I think so. I'll just give some stats, right? In the last 3 years, Snapchat has grown exponentially in India, right? It's not what we think it is, right? It's not what it used to be 4 or 5 years ago. Looking at the way they've reached out to smaller towns, it's amazing. So we've seen a growth in the regional stories Snapchat is doing on Snapchat as a platform. The second thing is we map regional apps quite a bit, right? We don't like to go the traditional Facebook and Instagram route. If you look at it, our communities on Instagram are very small, but our communities on Twitter, our communities on ShareChat, which is a regional app, our communities on Moj, which is like India's TikTok, the way it goes, right? These communities are really, really massive, right? So we map communities on these apps because it connects from a language. And when someone's authentically telling you a story, the way it's made in a way, we see like more and more people want to tell their own stories and share and comment around it. So that's how our reach mechanism works. I would like to give a trick. I think Moj and all the regional apps are very powerful and should be tried a lot more because tools have improved over the years a lot. When it started, it was very like breaky, but now you see like a community and the way the Indian apps are really, really enhancing tools is amazing. And Snapchat Discover is something that you cannot ignore in India because the way it's growing is massive.
And one more question on that, if I may. How do you map the user numbers in a way that then gives you the data to say, okay, we will put this story out on that platform or that app?
So one is, it's very easy. If you track the announcements that are made by these apps quite often, where they say that, okay, we have like a huge user base over here. I mean, they're making it to their investors, but like at the same time, if you know they've got like a user base, for example, Moj has a massive user base from states like Uttar Pradesh, states like various Hindi belts in the northern area. So it's amazing. But if you go for something like an MX Player, they have a massive user base in South India. So it's like how we map it is according to the app. We try and put everything everywhere, but like if we map the community and create content accordingly, it really works. So these regional apps don't have like equal audiences in all the states in India, right? So you just choose which works better. Public is another one, which is amazing for the multi-channel partnership. Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 questions about money. So the first one is, how do you monetize these videos? And, you know, perhaps thinking about the received wisdom that video isn't easy to monetize. And a separate but related question, which is, what are your various revenue sources, if you're happy to talk about that?
Sure. I think we work with various platforms who need video. See, that's why we're in the creator economy space. We have a lot of credibility because we have a strong fact checking mechanism. So we partner with, so we have this ongoing partnership with various media platforms as well. So one of them is South Asia Monitor, for example. They have a certain kind of stories that they want from certain kind of communities and a certain style of editorial that they have. So we basically make that connection, and that's pretty much why we thrive on the creator economy. This is how one of the main reasons how we monetize it, right? And the second is we also get third-party ads from a lot of these apps who are actually showing our content around it. And the last bit is we do have really amazing, we build creator communities, right? So which means we have communities of health, we have communities of environment, we have communities on gender, we have communities on finance, we have communities on gaming, and we're changing the way brands, right, are able to tell stories. Because if we look at the way brands are actually telling stories, you have this typical way where you have one influencer telling the story, but why not really have authentic users of that brand to be able to tell those stories? So that's, in a nutshell, that's how a business model revolves around various things.
All right, now I want to ask you a question as a trainer, because I know some of your income revenue comes from training programs. Yeah. So let's talk just briefly. Well, let's talk about that later in the session. But I want to think more about skills transfer. So yesterday, Nitin Chandalia was talking about the kinds of skills that newsrooms need. Some of them are familiar to us as journalists, like video production. At least we've heard of them, you know, and then some of them are quite unfamiliar to many of us. They weren't covered in journalism school. And I'm thinking things like, you know, advanced analytics or artificial intelligence or technology around personalization. So as a trainer, working with non-journalists, you're working with doctors, you're working with health workers, all kinds of people for whom journalism is unfamiliar. How do you encourage organizations to get to grips with an unfamiliar skill and make sure that it embeds in the right teams quickly and effectively? It's basically, how do you describe your dream journey as a trainer?
Okay, the thing is that we were born while we were training, right? Which makes it so exciting. And one of the things, like you really pointed out, is, and we've seen the user behavior of a lot of plug creators, is when they get trained for the first time, right? They're not journalists. Maybe some of them have gone to journalism schools and they've learned basic things. But as soon as they get trained and they've done a couple of stories, we see them starting their own digital media cohorts where they start publishing stories on various social media platforms, right? And the transfer of skills, really, we are very generous when it comes to training, right from, I think one of the most times we spend on is scripting, storyboarding, and anchoring and fact checking, right? These are 4 skills. If you have it, then all the tools that you need to use is information which is easily accessible, right? So we have hubs which actually keep constantly providing the latest tools and latest apps that you can use to edit, produce, and really improve whatever stories you're telling. And when it comes to calculating impact, the way we calculate it is very different from a lot of organizations, right? When you look at it from a brand, when you look at it from a media perspective as well, where the 2 metrics that I've actually talked about, how much is connecting to the community which is similar, and how much is connecting to communities who have no idea about it. And that analytics calculation becomes really, really important, because then they understand the real impact of each and every story done. Because if they don't have impact, it doesn't inspire them to upskill a lot more. And the upskilling ranges from, right, how to use a phone to how to script storyboard, to once they've actually created something, is how do I build a business out of it? How do I create gigs out of it? How do I partner with more and more organizations out of it? And it's amazing to see the creators that we have start working with various media publications after they're trained as well. And that's one of the reasons, is because they get a chance to produce amazing content very quickly and go on ground as well.
So do you feel then, if we think, I know this is outside both of our areas of expertise, but if we were to think about skills acquisition within newsrooms in unfamiliar skills, what has working with non-journalists on unfamiliar skills, I guess, taught you about best practice in making sure that someone can do something that's unfamiliar and is willing to embrace it and have a go? Maybe it's around the impact that it has.
Well, how candid can I be? So the first thing is
reasonably candid.
Like, whenever I talk to you, Corinne, I know I can be as candid, right? The first thing is, it's really about inspiration, right? It's about the gratification that they're receiving. And a lot of people who even join Plug, right? They've been in newsrooms before, right? Especially in our storytelling and centralized production team. And we hear horror stories about gratification and the pressure at work and mental health, right? And when you create a story and you're able to build a virtual community that's giving you not only just gratification, but at the same time, positive gratification, which encourages you to create more stories as a creator, not someone working in Plug, but as a creator, that really helps. And I think that's really about culture, which connects to impact, which connects to inspiration. I mean, these girls would have never imagined that they would get a Bannon promo, right? And they did, because first they couldn't realize what a story could do. And then they saw that more and more people want their stories. And suddenly you see, like, okay, I can do this. I want to talk about equality. I want to talk about equity. I want to talk about how I can change the world, but in a data-driven way. So yeah, it makes that shift. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that I've observed, certainly from newsroom leaders at WAN-IFRA conferences and at other conferences. The Asia Media Leaders Conference a few months ago that WAN-IFRA Asia led had the very senior person from the Globe and Mail in Canada, and they've built an in-house analytics tool which is called Sophie. And it's so interesting to hear, the editor-in-chief talking about initial sort of discomfiture and skepticism, and I'm not quite sure what this is, to being a really, vocal advocate of this analytics tool because he can see the impact that it has. And I guess that's something that I see is once people go, oh, you know what, if I do this way, or if I bring this into my workflow, it's going to have this impact. I think that's, and that's also what I'm taking away from what you're saying, is that if you can inspire people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's come back, if we can, just briefly to the point around revenue. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One is, training is part of the revenue approach at Pluck TV. And I was just thinking about, is that something that media organizations should be thinking about expanding some of the things that they do to build the capacity of the communities in which they operate?
I think we already see that culture coming in, where a lot more people are training, getting into that. So if you notice how fact check networks work, right? IFCN and the models they have around it, it's something which is already growing. Like in the last couple of years with virtual trainings and stuff, a lot more media organizations are getting into it, and it's amazing to see how they're building it. It's going to be interesting to see how they sustain, right, around it. One is about how you train and you just let the community be to thrive on their own, but really about how you make sure they're inspired and their belief in amazing storytelling does not go away in that way.
Yeah, 100%. There's a question here. Has the pandemic been hard on video production? I know a lot of certainly video producers have had to radically change the way they work, but it may be switching back now. So perhaps talk a little bit about that journey over the past couple of years and where you are now.
I can be honest, like the pandemic was, I should not say this, the pandemic was amazing to see how the Pluck model of production and storytelling worked really well, because we had such a decentralized model of doing it. And we saw massive growth. We saw like increase in production time. We saw the increase in videos. I mean, just to give an example, when the first lockdown happened, everybody was looking for stories. Everybody was looking for like really fact-check credible stories. And we had trained about 2,000 doctors who were belonging to, I've already shared the story with you, Corinne, before, right? We had trained a lot of these doctors who were already like, who were very hesitant in even tweeting or even putting it out there. When the pandemic hit, they realized suddenly the things that they were being trained on is now's their time to shine. And they started sharing these amazing stories from their homes, from their clinics, from their vaccine centers, from like literally training people how to use oxygen cylinders to like about telling you what is happening on COVID immediately. And at least 50 of them out of our creators were able to enhance the knowledge that the community could get. And they really got popular. And now you see them as like, you won't be able to differentiate between them and social media influencers because they become so cool in the stories that they tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that, TikTok has had an interesting journey in India, but you've mentioned that there are alternatives, but certainly first person information sharing from different kinds of sectors has been really interesting to watch on those vertical platforms. Now that brings us to two questions that kind of go together. So one is, what kind of content works best for video, and does Pluck TV identify itself with a particular type of content? But then there's also a question around attention spans, and what do we think about video length? So what kind of content, what kind of length?
So, okay, we look at ourselves as a platform more than a publisher, right? And my views, and not just my views, but everybody in the Pluck team's views are slightly traditional when it comes to looking at videos, right? We believe videos which can stay longer on the internet are the most powerful videos, right? Versus like short form videos and stuff. And that's what we really, really prioritize. The kind of stories that can actually stay longer on the internet. Whenever you search, you can get that information again. The information is updated and you can get access to it, right? So that's one. The second is our time goes between 2 minutes to 12 minutes. The longest we've done, which has now been like bought over by National Geographic, is a 45-minute documentary, which we did in a partnership with one of the production houses. And it was first published on Channel News Asia, and now it's like, it was a collaboration over there. Now it's on National Geographic, and you can actually see it on their apps, and it was also aired on traditional spaces. So it really varies, but the best part that we like is between 2 minutes to 12 minutes. And we've seen reach matters. It's because of the two quality metrics that I've talked about. It increases organic reach. Mm-hmm. And then we repurpose it into under 1 minuters and 30 minutes for quick trailers and stuff for promotion of the story, basically.
Surely it depends upon the target audience for a piece of content, though.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think the two things to look at it, Corinne, when you say target audience and when you say the community, right? If you look at, let's take, for example, sexual health, right? As a community is not really big in India, right? It may be big on mainstream, but it's not big in rural India because there's still a lot of stigma and taboo attached to it. And the first show that we actually did was called Attention Please, where the peer educators on sexual health for the first time got their voice and got their own show. And they were able to break stigmas using that show. And now you see that community growing. So it is really about how you might not get the best view in the first story, in the second story, but if the community starts building up, you're actually building new communities virtually, which makes it amazing.
That's such an interesting point, actually, isn't it? Because the community that you want to impact may not necessarily be the target audience of your content. I do want, I think, to just dig a little bit more into this question around the types of content. So, given that, WAN-IFRA, a large proportion of membership comes from the publishing industry, from the newspaper industry, let's think about the kinds of stories, or maybe that's way too broad. Let's think about the sort of bullet point requirements that say, yes, that's going to work really well as a piece of video as opposed to a text piece. Why would we go for, what are the bullet points we need to tick off for a video story?
Well, the first is who's telling the story, where they're telling the story from, and what is the angle that you're choosing for the story. One is like just a first person narrative, but is there a moment of change that is coming in the story for the creator? So these are quick things that we really look at. And then it really is about how it's not really about how well the story is shot now. It is really about how well the story is told, and how authentic and raw it is, if I have to be very quick. And that's how you can judge the things. And when it comes to understanding issues and stuff, it's really going back to the two metrics. The community that is connected to the issue is ready to rise and connect with it. And the second is the community who has no idea about the issue will be able to watch it, which means they should be able to easily understand what the story is, right? Which through subtitles, through all various things that you can connect with. So these are various things that we do.
Excellent. Now we have 3 minutes. And I want to ask you a quick question about mobile video. As you know, I'm very much into mobile journalism. I'm really excited by it. I know it's a passion for you as well, and it's affordable. So if you were to say to an editor or a manager, here's the kind of tools and maybe a couple of apps that people should be thinking about in 2022, what would be on your list?
Well, so the first I would say is you should really start connecting with AR kits, which are being accessible to the most cheapest smartphones, and start really experimenting with Snap Studio and start experimenting with Spark. All those things are really going to transform the way you are connecting to stories. It's become much easier to make like lenses and filters around it. And more people are doing it from smaller towns, not from bigger towns in India. So that's something I would suggest. And a lot of the other apps which are already going out there, it's something which is easily accessible. But if there's one app I would like to say is you should start using these studios, because it's going to be late by the time you start doing it if it's 2022 end. So
what was the name of it again, please?
So the Snap Studio and Spark. Like if you can start learning,
Snap Studio, Spark, and AR kits. Excellent. So we might try and send out something to folks on the call. I was looking up AR kits on Google, hoping that something would come up immediately, but it gave me something about model railways. So we'll have to try and find something else. Okay, now we have
I think one important thing to realize is cheaper smartphones have better cameras now and better audio, and it's improving day by day. So it's a natural progression. And the gig opportunities that people who are creating AR filters and lenses in smaller towns is much higher, because it's something that they want to learn a lot more, right? So that's one thing as well.
100%. I remember at the International Journalism Festival a few years ago, Glenn Mulcahy famously said, this year's smartphone camera is the worst that a camera will ever be, because they get better every year, which is just something extraordinary. So listen, we'll wrap up there. So Tamseel, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of this wonderful information about Girls on a Mission. You've been listening to Tamseel Hussain, Chief Executive Officer of Pluck TV and Let Me Breathe India. And we will head back now to the main session. So just click the back to timeline button on your browser, and then you'll be able to join the next session shortly in about 6 minutes. All right.